Hey, this is Jeff Pilson, and you are listening to Focus on Metal. Enjoy.
Hey, Metaleros, Scott Thompson here, welcoming you to another episode of Focus on Metal. So this week's show is what we call a timely drop-in from Richie. As I was going down another entire road for episode 587, Richie hit me up, told me he was talking to Jeff Pilson, so I've switched the order up, and so we'll see if what I was doing for 587 appears next week or the week after. But this week, we are talking to the man you heard at the beginning of the show, for once, actually. That is Jeff Pilson making his fourth appearance here on Focus on Metal. Yep, look back in the archives to figure it out. And yeah, Jeff first popped onto the show on episode 152 during the Strange Highways project. And this week, Jeff is joining us primarily to talk about the brand new Revolution Saints release with Joel Hoekstra, Dean Castronovo, and himself, called Against the Winds. But Richie being Richie, he took the opportunity while he had Jeff on the line, and since Jeff is involved in so many other things, to hit up Jeff on a lot of other questions he had about what's going on in the world of Jeff Pilson. And also, and I thought it was pretty cool, is he asked Jeff what he thought about Paul McCartney recovering the original Hofner bass, and asking Jeff if he had a similar issue. And Jeff gave us a great story all about that. So lots of good stuff, as usual, whenever we have Jeff on the show. Super awesome. He's awesome in person. He's awesome on the phone. And you're going to hear some great Jeff Pilson stuff this week on the show. So with all that in mind, I'm going to shut the hell up and turn it over to Richie and Jeff Pilson.
Hey, is that Jeff?
It is indeed.
Hey, Jeff, it's Richie here. How you doing?
Great.
Right. Nice to talk to you again. You're not going to remember me. That's okay.
Your voice sounds a bit familiar, but that's good.
Yeah,
okay.
I've interviewed you backstage at a few shows over the years, and I've done phoners with you.
Gotcha. Well, good to hear your voice.
So I have you on to talk about the Revolution Saints album.
All right.
Yeah. So I never asked you this question before, but how many guitars do you have in your house?
In my house?
Yeah.
I think it's around 45, maybe.
I know, because
They're all different.
the only reason, one of the reasons I'm asking you is I've interviewed musicians who've recorded with you. Like Rob McCauley's a friend of mine, so he like some of the guys who've recorded with you have said, yeah, you'll just take out this old bass guitar, try this, or this guitar and try that. So I'm sure you have a lot at your studio, but I've always wanted to know how many you have in your house. So before
well, I mean, that's including the studio, but that's studio and then in the house and various storage places and in the garage and in the storage shed. It's at least 45, yeah.
Okay. I don't know whether you read about Paul McCartney getting reunited with an old bass guitar he had with the Beatles.
I did. I am familiar with that.
Have you ever had anything like that where you've been reunited with a guitar that you thought was gone years ago?
I sure have. Actually, it's a funny and wonderful story. I years ago, during the Monsters of Rock, for instance, which was 1988, I was playing a blue Spectre bass, and it was a Spectre bass made by Buddy Blaze in the Brooklyn shop, so it was a premium bass at the time. Long story short, I lent it to George Lynch when he started doing the first Lynch Mob record, and then when I asked him for it back, he said, "No, you gave it to me." I said, "No, I wouldn't have given it to you. It's a really special bass." He goes, "No, you did. You said you gave it to me." Anyways, that went back and forth for a long time. Finally, I just didn't get the bass back, and I went, well, okay, whatever. Even though it was a great bass, and I was sad for its loss, but I mean, I kind of couldn't convince George that I hadn't given it to him. Anyway, whatever. So years later, I get a call from Marty O'Brien. Marty O'Brien is currently the bass player for Daughtry, but he's played with Lita Ford, Kelly Clarkson. He's played on a bunch of records. He's a fabulous bass player. I've known him since the 90s when he lived in Providence, Rhode Island. But, we've become good friends over the years. Anyways, I get a call from him one Sunday morning, and he says, "Hey, I've got something. Can I come over?" And I was like, wow, I wonder what this is. But sure, yeah, come on over. So he comes over. I open the door. He hands the bass. He puts a bass out, and it's the Blue Spectre. I'm like, and I recognize it immediately, and I go, "How in the world do you have that bass?" And he tells me the story that basically he found it online in the early 90s because he was looking for a bass like the one I had at Monsters of Rock. I don't think I was the only guy that inspired him to get this bass, but I think I was one of the guys that inspired him to get this kind of bass. And when he found it, they said was owned by George, or was used by Jeff Pilson during the Monsters of Rock tour, and blah, blah, blah. So he said he bought it sight unseen, because he then, as soon as they said that, he knew what bass it was. So he bought it sight unseen. It became his baby. He loved that bass when he was playing in various bands in the 90s. He even opened up for Dio. He was in a band that opened up for Dio, and I think that's when I met him, although I don't have a lot of memory of that particular meeting, but I know Dio played in Providence probably 94, I'm guessing, 93, 94. So he came to the show, and he was probably playing that bass, and I didn't see him. But anyways, long story short, he didn't want to bring it up over all the years because he was worried it would cause a problem between George and I. So anyways, when I found that out, it was like, I was so happy. I said, "Well, I got to give you the money that you paid for it." And he goes, "No, that ruined the story." So you got to give Marty a lot of credit. He was really cool about it. He just gave it back to me. It now hangs in my family room with a little plaque, and it's wonderful that I got reunited with it, and it's great to have the bass back.
Nice.
So, yes, I understand how. I mean, it's not as extreme as Paul's, and certainly not as valuable as Paul's. I mean, can you imagine how many millions of dollars that bass would be worth? But, I mean, that's the bass. And it's like he had two of those Hofners during the 60s, and that was one of them. So, pretty amazing.
Yeah, yeah. Of course, today I'm talking to you, Jeff, Mick Jones has just revealed that he's battling Parkinson's disease. I want to ask you, how difficult was that for you to not say anything? Because you would have had people coming up to you at shows asking you why Mick wasn't on stage with you.
It's been extremely difficult. I mean, it's been really difficult. It's somewhat heartbreaking. Although I got to tell you, I suspected that he had Parkinson's long before he even got the diagnosis. And I think I even mentioned something, but, management was like, no, he's been checked for that. It's not that. And, oh, wow. Anyway, but yes, it's been difficult. It's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But I'm glad he's bringing it up because, hopefully they can start to do something about this horrible, horrible, horrible disease. My stepfather had it, which is probably how I recognize some of the signs. So yeah, I'm hoping that this leads to more people trying to help out in conquering a really horrible disease.
Mm. Over the years, Jeff, have you ever sat down with Mick and just asked him his approach to songwriting? Because I know, you've written a lot of songs over the years, just to maybe pick his brain on where did this idea come from? Where do you start?
Of course. And we've worked on songs together. So, yeah. And I love working with Jones. I really do. And that's part of the heartbreaking thing that we've had to deal with the last few years is it would be so great to, really work with him. But, there are still, it's not like he's a vegetable or anything. He's still pretty together. So, I think he's had it for a while, but I think there are still times when he's very, very together. So, I hope I do get to work with him some more. But the times I've worked with him they're very enlightening. A window into he's a genius songwriter. Let's face it, he really is. And getting to work with him, watch him work, see how he approaches things, and ask him about it. Yeah, because I ask all sorts of questions when I'm with people that I look up to, especially in work related things. I ask him a lot of questions, and so yeah, I picked his brain a lot.
I think sometimes with songwriting though, Jeff, you can't point your finger at what he does that's great. It just comes out of him. And that's the most frustrating thing, I think, maybe for you when you're asking them. It's like, you can't explain it to me, I just have it.
In a way, yeah. I mean, well, and I understand that as well. So really what it is you talk about how do you get into the zone? How do you get to that place where it is just flowing and it just kind of comes through you? That's the magical spot. And, nobody has 100% grasp for that, I don't believe. But people have their various ideas, and Mick being one of them, some very, very concrete ideas of what you do to get yourself in that zone. And those kind of things are fascinating to talk with him about.
Speaking of songwriting, I'll swing it on to Revolution Saints now, Jeff. How many songs does Alessandro Del Vecchio have in him?
Apparently thousands.
Yeah.
I don't know. The guy is really prolific, wonderful writer, really great producer and engineer. So, I mean, I love Alessandro, and I love his work. I think he's amazing. And yeah, the guy is a songwriting machine. Pretty cool. He does want to try and open it up to the band a bit on the next record, which I think will be fun. I'm hoping we can get into situations where that'll happen. But if it doesn't, we do have Alessandro, which is great.
How long have you known Joel Hoekstra and Dean?
Well, I've known Dean. I mean, I probably met him in the 80s, I want to say, and definitely had contact with him in the 90s. Got to know him better. I mean, Journey toured with Foreigner. We did a tour together in 2011. I think that's when I kind of got closer to him. So I've known Dean a long time. Joel, I met, I want to say, before he was in Night Ranger. He was in the Rock of Ages band in New York on Broadway. So I want to say I met him around then, so probably mid-2010s, somewhere in there. And then, of course, when in 2011, no, so it would have been before that. I'm sorry, because in 2011 he came in and substituted for Mick Jones on several shows. He was in Night Ranger at the time, and Mick had his situation. So when he left the tour, Joel took over for I want to say 10 or 11 shows, and just did an amazing job. He had zero time to prepare, zero. I mean, he had a night, and the night that he found out, he also had to do the Rock of Ages band. So he comes back in New York from the Rock of Ages band that night, woodsheds the songs a bit at home in New York. The next day flies to wherever we are. I think it was Oklahoma or something. Anyways, comes to my hotel room for a half an hour, and we go back and forth and just kind of going over specifics. Comes to the sound check, does the show, and doesn't make a single mistake. He's an unbelievable machine. So I mean, so I've worked with Joel since 2011. Probably known him a few years before that. He was in Night Ranger and stuff. So couldn't give you any exact dates, but somewhere around in there.
He's one of these guys, Jeff, that he's a fabulous guitar player, but he should probably be more well known than he is. If someone was to ask me that question, who do you think should be more well known as a guitar player who's really, really good? I'd say, yeah, Joel Hoekstra would be one of them.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, he's right up there with, unfortunately he didn't enter the scene until it was after the time when guys like that were able to get the exposure that they deserve. So yeah, he excuse me, that became a problem, or that's the reason why he isn't as well known as he is. And yes, he should be.
Yeah. So how come, Jeff, you're more heavily involved in producing the End Machine than you are with Revolution Saints?
Well, that's just the way it was set up. I mean, End Machine was, it's a production deal with me, so I'm sort of responsible for the End Machine, like Alessandro is responsible for Revolution Saints. And Revolution Saints was already in place, but when I joined, they had 2 or 3 records out before I even joined.
Yeah.
So that was in place, and I was told I'm going to come in, and I actually enjoyed the fact that I got to come in and just be the bass player. That's a very nice thing for me to let go of all the top end responsibilities of everything and just be a bass player. That's actually very fun for me. So I knew the deal joining Revolution Saints. When End Machine was formed, the idea was that I'd be the producer and all that. So they're just kind of the way the deals were set up and put in place.
Okay. With the End Machine, how surprised were you that Robert Mason left the group?
Well, he didn't. I mean, the thing with Robert is, first of all, he didn't do anything wrong or anything else. But I think Robert felt uncomfortable trying to write in the style that we were going for. Robert is of our generation, so for him, that's kind of like repeating yourself and trying to do. It's a forced situation. When Garish came into the picture, it's natural for him because this is where he comes from. The music that George and I tend to write, that's where it's in his DNA. So I think he felt very natural. So when he started writing for it, it just felt natural. It's not forced at all. And he had a great attitude about it. And, we had to do rewrites and all that, but man, he did a great job. And with Robert, I think it just didn't feel, like a comfortable place to be. I mean, I think he wanted to move forward more as a writer. And, I understand that. I get that. It's not what this situation turned out to be.
Okay. Did you contact Joel at all about Garish because he'd played on his record, or was that a recommendation from the label?
Well, I mean, I didn't contact Joel specifically for that reason, but I did happen to talk with Joel after Garish was his singer, and yeah, we found it very ironic. And he thinks the world of him. So yeah, it's kind of cool.
Mm. Did you have a wish list of who you wanted as a singer when Robert said he wouldn't do it?
No, actually, the whole thing came about because Garish was brought to our attention, and he just sounded so incredible that it was a no-brainer. So when we heard his voice, that was what made us decide on the change.
Okay. Of course, you still have Steve Brown in the band. Now, I've interviewed Mick, and I couldn't get a word in. Is Steve the same way?
Steve is a very effusive personality. He's a lovable guy. He's just a wonderful man. I adore Steve, and I've known him since he was 16 years old. So, actually 15, because I remember his 16th birthday. So, anyway, yeah, he's a great guy. He's got Mick's kind of personality, very, very sparkly though, and I mean really sparkly, and just fun. He's just a fun guy, really fun to work with, lots of laughs. Like Mick, I mean, when George and Mick and I worked together, there was always just this beautiful, natural, flowing chemistry. And we always enjoyed it. We always had a lot of fun. And we worked hard, too. And Steve's the same way. He works really hard, but we have a lot of laughs. We make it fun, and that's how music should be.
Jeff, I know Mick is retired. Do you still keep in touch with him at all?
Yeah. I mean, my birthday was a few weeks ago, and he texted me a really sweet text. And
nice.
We talked not too terribly long before that, actually. We talked before I had my surgery, because he had it was really weird. I had back surgery in November, and he had a premonition about it, and he called me to talk about it. It was kind of interesting. So yes, I have contact with Mick. I haven't spoken with him a while now, but, the text on my birthday was so sweet that said a lot.
Okay. I want to ask how frustrating it is as an artist to create music and never really get an opportunity to play it live. You've only done a couple of shows with the End Machine. You've done a couple of records with Black Swan you haven't played live, and you got Revolution Saints. And I know you're out with Foreigner playing all these classic songs, but you've got all this new material that you've played on, and you never get a chance to really play it live.
Yes. How frustrating is that? Well, it is frustrating. I mean, you kind of know that going into it, so it isn't the same as where once upon a time a band would sit in a room, they'd work things out together, they'd play it, they'd record it, then they go out and play it live. It's not that scene, and yes, I miss that. That was a beautiful, beautiful arrangement, and it was a wonderful process, and I loved all of it. I loved it, but it's not the reality of the music business right now, which I can't change. So like I say, so yes, it's frustrating, but because I'm so aware of it going into it, it doesn't affect me like it could.
It seems to affect the fans a lot more than it does the musicians.
I would say you're right.
And I'm
think
one of them.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, and I just explained to people it's logistically so impossible to pull the schedules. I mean, you got multiple bands. I mean, Tesla, Foreigner, Lynch Mob. I mean, that's just the M Machine. Then with Black Swan, Whitesnake, Winger, MSG. I mean, there's just so many different things.
Yeah.
And everybody has to work. That's just the way it is. So it's logistically impossible. I mean, it's expensive. People don't realize how expensive it is to rehearse and work up a band, to do gigs where there's really no money in it because you're not an established band. So there's just a laundry list of reasons why it can't happen. And because we know all those things going into it, the frustration of not being able to play these songs live gets tempered by that.
Okay. I just got a couple of questions before I leave you go, Jeff. I have to ask you about James Kotak.
Sure.
Yeah, for me personally, me doing the show about 12 years, he was one of the nicest guys I'd met and interviewed. Yeah. But you have a history with him that goes way back. Do I?
Yeah, I know.
Can you tell me a little bit about your friendship with James?
Yeah, well, it began the night I met him. I think he was it might have even been his 21st birthday. I'm not sure, but I believe he had just turned 21. And he came to he had just come to LA. He had just driven into LA with his girlfriend, and they came to the Rainbow, and I was there that night, I think with Bobby Blotzer. And I met James, and we hung that entire night and had a great, I was like, oh, who is this kid? He's great. He's fresh and young. And I didn't know anything about his playing, but I felt his energy. And we became friends. And we became friends and hung out several times before I heard him play drums, honestly. Then when I heard him play, I was like, oh, this kid is great. And I knew things, I knew big things were coming. And yeah, then in the late 80s and early 90s, we did a lot of sessions together for Keith Olsen. I mean, numerous records. We were kind of Keith's go-to bass player and drummer for, a year and a half, I want to say, 2 years maybe. And we did so many records together and had so much fun doing them. Keith Olsen was such a fun guy to do records with. I mean, I can't even tell you. And the studio was right down the street from my house, which was beautiful. Yeah, I go back to that. I lost contact with James in recent years. Last time I saw him that I remember was at a festival in Belgium years back. But I love James dearly. I was heartbroken, really heartbroken. Unfortunately, I knew he had a lot of problems. He had even reached out through emails not too terribly long ago, where he sort of expressed that he was working on getting help and things like that. So I was hoping he was improving, but I knew there was problems. And I'm heartbroken. I mean, he was a friend for 41 years. Mm-hmm. So yeah, heartbreaking.
Yeah. I want to ask you, Jeff, final question about one of the records you did with Keith, and I think James was on it. Do you remember doing any the Dare record, Blood from Stone? Because I'm a big fan of that.
I do indeed, and I remember the two guys that were involved. Darren was one of them, and I can't remember the other guy's name. But
Vinnie Burns, that was it?
Yeah, probably. Yeah. It actually doesn't sound familiar, but anyway. It was a fun record. I mean, those guys were great. And again, doing a record with Keith, it was fun. It was hard work too, because they were a little different than a lot of the stuff we did. But man, it was really fun because I thought their music was really fresh. There was something really cool and fresh about their music. So that was just a fun, detailed record.
So Jeff, what's happening now with After Foreigner? You've obviously thought about it. What plans do you have?
Well, there's no after yet. The only thing there is after is big, long tours. This is the last year we're going to do a big, long tour. But we're going to be, we're still going to exist. And I know we're going to do some shows in 2025. It's just they're going to be very select. But this is the last year of long touring, which for me is great because as much as I love to play live, travel has gotten to be a difficult thing as you get older. Yeah. And I do love being home in the studio. I really do. And I love to make records. So hopefully I'll get to do a lot more of that. My schedule will open up a lot in 2025. So there will be Foreigner work to do. There are songs still floating around. So there is finishing them, which I hope we can do. But there are complications involved with that. But that's something that we've talked about that we'd like to do when we have some time in 2025. But again, it's going to be making a lot more records, and maybe I will get a chance to play live. George is kind of wrapping up his Lynch Mob farewell ride this year, so his schedule will open up a bit in 2025. The logistics and a lot of those problems still remain, but scheduling-wise, at least for George and I, we're probably going to have more time. So hopefully we'll get to do something live. It would be just so amazing if we did. But my main plans post Foreigner touring are making records, hopefully one with Foreigner as well, at least some new songs, and just making records and doing what I'd love to do.
Okay, what about Black Swan? Are you doing a third record?
Yeah. Reb was here just a couple weeks ago, and we spent a hardcore week and got 7 songs deep into the next Black Swan record. So we're very excited about that, and we're on our way. It's not going to come out, I'm sure, until sometime into 2025. But yeah, we got a great start to a new record.
Excellent. That's great news, Jeff. I think you're up my way in the summer, so hopefully I'll get out and see you.
Where are you?
I'm in Boston, just outside of Boston.
Oh, yeah. No, we're definitely playing there, I believe, with Styx and John Waite. So, yes, hopefully see you in the summer. Try and come up and introduce yourself if you can.
I will. I'll hit you up a text, Jeff, and see if we can do something.
That would be great. Thank you so much, man. Great talking to you. You are a fabulous interview.
All right, fabulous. Jeff. Have a good rest of the day. Take care.
Thanks. Right. Bye-bye.
And there you go, Richie's chat with Jeff Pilson. Hopefully a lot of good stuff in there. And obviously we've been able to have the opportunity to talk to Jeff about some pretty late breaking news as far as Mick Jones. And so that was just rather timely that dropped in. And of course, a reminder back that, you want to support the artist, pick up the new Revolution Saints album, Against the Winds. Great players on there with Joel and Dean. And, be sure to check out Jeff on tour this summer with Foreigner. And hopefully we'll get to see him out there with some other bands as well very soon. Like he mentioned, George kind of wrapping up Lynch Mob. So maybe we'll be able to see something in that department later on. Would definitely be great to even see some of that Lynch Pilson stuff played live. And just roping in these, last minute things that get announced. In case you missed it earlier this week, AC/DC announced that they were going to be doing reissues of 9 of the albums in their catalog on, I think they were referring to it as Gleaming Gold Vinyl. And there's a 50th anniversary label in the center of it as well. So if you're into AC/DC and into vinyl, that might be something to add into your collection. You can go up to store.acdc.com and check that out. I think they have an announcement on their site as well about it. And they've also got, besides the Gleaming Gold up at the AC/DC store, they have actually a couple of the other releases in some other vinyl as well. There's a special one, multicolor, of Highway to Hell. They've got another one that's back in black in multiple colors. But for me, I think I'm probably going to be trying to check out all of that Gleaming Gold one, just add that in. I just like those wholesale reissue catalog stuff like the one that Sound of Vinyl did, I think last year or 2 years ago, for the entire Scorpions catalog. That one was pretty sweet. And there's been a few others like that were really well done and cohesive. So, I know I've already got pre-orders in for 3 of the 9 as of right now, and I do plan on plunking down to get the remaining 6 as well. So a short but sweet episode this week. Wanted to make sure that I got this out quickly. It's, it's timely as far as getting the word out about Rev Saints, and we owe it to Jeff. Always been a great guest, always been a good supporter and hooking us up with folks as well. So with that, there ain't no more. Stick a fork in it. This puppy is done. So for Richie, myself, and everybody else here at Focus on Metal, have yourselves a great metal week. And until we talk to you again, as always, remember,
Focus on metal. Everything else is insignificant.
You're still here? It's over. Go home.